When you have a toddler, a tantrum, well, it generally makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, it's loud, but there's a clear cause and effect.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe they missed a nap.
Or you handed them the blue cup instead of the red one.
Right. You can usually trace the meltdown back to a very specific logical origin point.
You can draw a straight line to the problem. The issue is visible, and the solution is, usually just sleep, a snack, or distraction.
It's right there in front of you. But then you wake up one day, and that toddler is 13 years old.
And everything changes.
Everything. Suddenly, you are navigating what feels like a daily emotional minefield. I mean, you say good morning in the exact same tone you always use.
And the response is a door slam.
A door slam that practically rattles the windows. And that linear logic you used to rely on, it completely vanishes.
The rules of engagement just shift entirely overnight. Those old tools, they just stop working. What used to be a simple interaction becomes, frankly, incredibly complex to diagnose.
Which brings us to today. Welcome to today's deep dive. If you're listening to this right now, chances are you are a parent, a caregiver, or, someone who supports a teenager.
And we know you're busy.
So busy.
Yeah.
You're likely exhausted, trying to juggle a million things, and you definitely aren't looking for some dense, academic theory to add to your mental load.
No, nobody wants a textbook right now. You want practical ways to survive the daily roller coaster of family life without losing your mind.
You need a lifeline.
Yeah.
You need to know that you aren't failing at this.
Exactly. You need actionable ways to navigate the chaos when it literally erupts in your living room.
Which is why today's source material feels like such a huge relief. We're pulling from a really comprehensive design brief for a workbook by the brand Playprint Pals, and it's titled Teen Emotions Decoded.
It's such a great resource. It was designed to act as this warm, completely non-judgmental field guide for real life.
The mission for our deep dive today is to extract the absolute best, most actionable daily grounding techniques from this source.
We want to help you manage the overwhelm, figure out what your teenager is actually feeling, and build a baseline of emotional safety in your home.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can get to the practical grounding tools, we really have to look at the biology.
We do. We cannot address the behavior until we understand the neurological why behind all this chaos.
And what's fascinating here is that the biological why is genuinely the most important foundation. Because, when a teenager flies off the handle at a seemingly innocent comment, it feels incredibly personal.
Oh, it feels like a direct attack.
Right. But the source material lays out exactly what is happening under the hood. The guide highlights that the teen brain has two completely distinct regions maturing at drastically different rates.
Right. So you have the limbic system, which includes the amygdala.
The emotion center.
Exactly. It's essentially the brain's ancient survival and emotional processing center. It handles fear, pleasure, and immediate reactive emotions. And in a teenager, this system is fully online.
It's operating at maximum capacity.
It is entirely mature. But then on the flip side, you have the reasoning center, the prefrontal cortex.
The part that says, hey, maybe don't do that.
Right, the impulse control center. It's the simulator that allows a person to pause and think, wait, what are the long-term consequences if I scream at my mom right now?
And that region, it doesn't finish developing until their mid-20s.
Mid-20s.
It's essentially like handing a teenager the keys to a high-powered sports car, showing them the gas pedal, and then casually mentioning, oh, by the way, the brakes are on back order for the next decade.
That is the perfect analogy, because we often expect adult-level emotional regulation from a brain that physically does not have the hardware installed yet.
The brakes just aren't there.
The capacity to pause simply isn't there in a heated moment. And, you have to layer the hormonal shifts on top of that structural gap.
Oh, right. The hormones. Estrogen, testosterone, and cortisol are just flooding their system. The source actually calls those hormones an amplifier, which sounds a little intimidating. How does that amplification actually work in the brain?
So let's look at cortisol, the primary stress hormone. When cortisol levels spike, it physically alters how the brain processes information.
Wait, really? Physically alters it?
Yes. It narrows a person's cognitive focus entirely to perceived threats. So an inconvenience that might register as, say, a 2 out of 10 for you, like a misplaced pair of shoes or a sudden change in dinner plans.
Just a minor annoyance.
Exactly. But that is processed by their chemically soaked brain as an 8 out of 10. Their physiological alarm system is highly sensitive, meaning everyday emotional reactions are biologically intensified.
And while all this invisible biological construction is happening, they are also right in the middle of a very intense developmental stage. The guide refers to this as the who am I phase.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The identity crisis.
Right. They are evolutionarily wired to push against family rules, to try on completely new styles and personalities, and to suddenly care deeply, almost exclusively, about what their peers think.
Yeah, and leaning heavily on peer opinion and separating from parents that isn't a glitch. It is a feature of how they forge an individual identity.
It's supposed to happen.
It is.
Yeah.
And it is inherently messy.
Just knowing this biology honestly feels like the very first real grounding technique for you, the parent.
Yeah.
Because when you realize that the rapid mood shifts, the eye rolls, the extreme sensitivity to social feedback.
When you realize that is a neurological phenomenon, not an intentional personal attack on your parenting.
You can actually take a breath. It gives you permission to stop matching their chaos with your own.
Understanding that dynamic completely shifts your perspective. You stop seeing a defiant kid and start seeing a struggling nervous system.
But of course, having sympathy for their brain development doesn't magically stop the sports car from crashing into a wall on a Tuesday night over homework.
Exactly. Knowing they don't have brakes doesn't make the crash any less loud or frustrating.
We can't live our whole lives just passively observing their biology. We have to talk about what you can actually do in the heat of the moment to ground yourself and your teen.
Right.
The workbook spends a lot of time on decoding what it calls cover emotions. And anger is the biggest one.
Anger is almost always a secondary emotion for teenagers. I like to think of it as a smoke alarm.
A smoke alarm.
Yeah. When your teenager is screaming about how unfair a curfew is, or they're snapping at you over something minor at dinner, the anger is just the loud, piercing noise of the alarm.
But the alarm doesn't tell you the whole story.
Right. A smoke alarm doesn't tell you if the whole house is burning down or if you just burned a piece of toast in the kitchen.
It just screams to get your attention.
Precisely. And underneath that sharp, defensive noise of anger is usually something deeply vulnerable. The actual fire is usually frustration or fear, hurt, or embarrassment.
But for a teenager, admitting they feel insecure or overwhelmed, that feels incredibly unsafe.
Extremely unsafe. It is much easier and feels much more powerful to project loud anger outwards.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Because in the moment, when that smoke alarm is blaring and the anger is flaring, the guide suggests a very specific technique. The 20 to 30-minute cool-down window.
The pause.
Yes, you're supposed to step away. But I have to push back a little here on behalf of every parent listening. If my teen is yelling at me, being actively disrespectful, and I just walk away for 30 minutes, aren't I just letting them get away with bad behavior?
That is such a common worry.
Doesn't that teach them that they could explode and I'll just retreat?
It feels like surrender, I get it. But we have to go back to the biological mechanisms we just talked about. The cooldown is not a free pass. It is a biological constraint.
A constraint. Okay.
When your teen is in a state of rage, their amygdala is inflamed, and their body has just dumped a massive amount of adrenaline and cortisol into their bloodstream.
So the fight or flight response is fully engaged.
Completely.
Yeah.
And here's the crucial part. It literally takes the human body a minimum of 20 to 30 minutes to process those stress hormones out of the bloodstream.
Wow.
Minimum. Until that physiological clearing happens, the reasoning part of their brain remains offline. You cannot reason with an inflamed amygdala.
You just can't.
If you stay in that moment and try to lecture them or demand immediate respect, you aren't teaching a lesson. You are just throwing gasoline on a fire.
Because they physically cannot process the logic of your lecture while they're flooded with adrenaline.
Exactly. Taking that 30-minute pause is a deliberate grounding technique. It allows their nervous system to settle, and it gives that prefrontal cortex time to reboot.
You are pausing the interaction so that an actual productive conversation can happen later, rather than just participating in a shouting match.
It requires immense discipline from the parent, though. You are essentially saying, I love you too much to argue with you when your brain is offline. We will talk about this in half an hour.
And it's not just anger that masks vulnerability, right? The guide also dives deeply into how anxiety acts as a cover.
Oh, yes. Teen anxiety is incredibly deceptive. We are conditioned to picture anxiety as, someone hyperventilating or openly worrying about an upcoming test.
Like the classic movie version of a panic attack.
Right. But the source points out that in teenagers, anxiety often masquerades as physical ailments or just abrupt behavioral shifts.
Like what?
You'll see frequent unexplained headaches, sudden sleep issues, or a constant low-level irritability.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe they suddenly refuse to go to soccer practice, claiming their stomach hurts, when in reality, they are intensely anxious about a shifting social dynamic on the team.
When you spot those hidden signs, the immediate grounding technique isn't to interrogate them or demand to know what's wrong. It's to help them regulate.
Yes, the workbook suggests non-clinical, simple tools to pull them out of their own heads. Things like teaching them deep breathing or a naming technique.
Like the five senses thing?
Similar, yeah. Just asking them to name 3 specific physical objects they can see in the room right then. It forces the brain out of the hypothetical future spiral and back into the physical present.
Okay, so let's assume you've used the cool down. The 30 minutes have passed, the adrenaline is cleared, and the immediate storm is over. The challenging behavior still happened, though, and the conversation still needs to take place.
Right, you can't just ignore it forever.
So we move from crisis management to the actual mechanics of safe communication. The source outlines 3 fundamental keys to real conversations with a teenager. Listening to understand rather than to fix, naming the emotion out loud, and choosing calm moments over confrontations.
Those are crucial.
But that first one, the instinct to fix, is incredibly difficult to suppress. I mean, as a parent, your primary job for the first decade of their life was fixing things. Tying shoes, gluing broken toys, putting bandages on scraped knees.
This raises an important question, though. Why are we, as adults, so desperate to fix our teenagers' complex emotional problems the absolute second they bring them up?
Because it hurts to watch someone you love struggle.
Yeah.
We just want to take away their pain.
That is the generous interpretation, and it's certainly part of it. But if we analyze the psychology a bit deeper, jumping into fix a teenager's social drama or academic stress is very often a parent's way of managing their own anxiety.
Ouch.
It is deeply uncomfortable to sit with your child's distress. So we offer unsolicited advice or leap into problem-solving mode to make ourselves feel better, to feel like we are back in control.
Because if we fix it, we don't have to feel anxious about it anymore.
Exactly. But true grounding requires the maturity to hold space for their discomfort without rushing in to rescue them.
So what does this all mean for the physical reality of talking to them? It sounds like we need to stop treating conversations like a face-to-face tug of war, where we are pulling them toward our brilliant adult solutions.
Right.
And start treating them like a collaborative puzzle. We need to sit next to each other, looking at the same problem together.
Which perfectly aligns with one of the most brilliant practical hacks in the entire workbook. The side-by-side conversation.
I found this fascinating. The guide specifically points out that if you want a teenager to open up, the absolute worst thing you can do is sit across from them at a dining room table and stare deeply into their eyes.
It's the worst, because direct, sustained eye contact from an authority figure is evolutionarily interpreted by the nervous system as a threat.
It feels like an interrogation.
It does. It raises their defenses immediately.
Instead, you do it side by side. You go for a walk together. Or, my personal favorite, you use the holy grail of teen parenting, the car ride.
Oh, the car ride is magic.
It really is. You are both looking out the windshield. There is absolutely no pressure to maintain eye contact. You are physically aligned, moving in the exact same direction.
The threat level drops to 0.
It's astonishing how much more a teenager will reveal about their life when you are both staring at brake lights in traffic instead of staring at each other.
And in those lowered threat environments, you can practice what the guide calls boundaries with warmth. Being an empathetic listener does not mean you abandon all household rules.
Right. You're not just letting them run wild.
No. Empathy and structure actually rely on each other.
The workbook provides these great scripted phrases to help maintain rules without re-escalating the conflict. You can say something like, I can see how incredibly frustrated you are about this curfew, and I want to hear your thoughts on it, but the rule stands for tonight.
I love that. It's warm, it validates the emotion, but it is firm on the boundary. You remain a safe, sturdy wall for them to push against.
But we can't just talk about emergency responses. Grounding shouldn't only happen during or right after an argument. If you only practice these tools when things go wrong, you are constantly playing defense.
Which is exhausting. We have to look at the proactive, everyday habits that build a baseline of emotional safety long before an argument ever starts.
The daily architecture of family life. The guide highlights the profound importance of establishing steady routines, things like a predictable family meal or a consistent weekend activity.
Yes. In a phase of life where their physical bodies are changing rapidly and their social lives feel entirely unpredictable, a steady routine at home provides a deep subconscious anchor of safety.
They also emphasize allowing gradual independence, normalizing open conversations about feelings, and having mindful discussions about screen time.
And not just aggressively confiscating phones, but actually talking about how the constant input of being online makes them feel physically and emotionally.
And as part of that everyday awareness, parents need to learn how to differentiate between normal situational teen struggles and actual red flags. Knowing when to reach out for extra support is vital.
It is, because there is normal developmental sadness, and then there is something that requires intervention. The workbook gives concrete markers to look for.
What are the markers?
You are looking at duration. Is this lasting for weeks on end, rather than just a few bad days? You are looking at intensity. And most crucially, you are looking at the impact on their daily life.
Like, are they suddenly dropping out of activities they used to love?
Exactly. Are their grades inexplicably tanking? Are they isolating completely from friends?
And if you see those red flags, the guide frames getting help beautifully. Reaching out for professional guidance like finding a therapist or counselor is never a sign of failure as a parent.
Never. It is a sign of absolute strength. You are simply bringing a specialist onto your team to help your child navigate an overwhelmingly tough developmental window.
Now, there is one piece of the everyday habits we haven't touched on yet, and it is undoubtedly the hardest one to execute. The guide emphasizes that parents must actively model emotional regulation themselves,
Hardest one by far.
which sounds great on paper. But practically speaking, how on earth are you supposed to model Zen-like emotional regulation for your volatile teenager when you are exhausted, stressed about work, managing a household, and just utterly overwhelmed yourself?
Right, we're human. If we connect this to the bigger picture of the workbook, it is actually incredibly realistic about that exact struggle. You are not going to be perfectly regulated all the time.
Thank goodness.
But the strategy they offer for those moments of exhaustion is the one-line grounding reminder, a simple internal mantra.
Just a phrase you keep in your back pocket for emergencies.
Yes. When you feel your own heart rate spiking, when your teenager is pushing every single button you possess, you rely on a quiet phrase you repeat to yourself before you open your mouth.
Like what?
Something like, "This is their brain under construction," or "I am the adult, they are learning," or even just the word "breathe."
Just grounding yourself first.
Exactly. By modeling that pause, by letting your teen physically watch you take a deep breath and regulate your own nervous system before you respond to their provocation, you are teaching them more about emotional intelligence than 1,000 lectures ever could. You become the anchor the whole family relies on.
Okay, this has been an incredibly rich deep dive. Let's do a quick recap of the core tools we've pulled from Teen Emotions Decoded for all the parents and caregivers out there in the trenches. First, remember the biology.
Right. Their emotional gas pedal is stuck to the floor, and the reasoning brakes are on back order. Don't take the mood swings personally.
Second, remember the smoke alarm. Look beneath the loud noise of anger to find the fear, frustration, or embarrassment hiding underneath.
Third, utilize the biological necessity of the 30-minute cooldown. Let the adrenaline clear the bloodstream before you try to reason with a storm.
Fourth, utilize the side-by-side hack.
Yeah.
Get in the car, look straight out the windshield, and practice listening to understand rather than jumping in to fix.
And finally, build those steady daily routines to create a baseline of emotional safety and have your one-line mantra ready for when you are the one who needs to regulate.
It's a powerful, actionable toolkit.
It really is. It shifts the focus from trying to control the teenager to managing the environment and the connection.
To wrap this up, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over.
Oh, I like this.
We've spent this entire time talking about the teenager's brain, their hormones, and their search for identity. But raising a teenager rarely just impacts the teenager. Often when your child hits this stage and starts pushing boundaries, rolling their eyes, or expressing loud anger, it activates something deep within you.
It acts as a mirror.
Exactly. It forces you to confront your own unresolved baggage. If you grew up in a home where expressing anger wasn't allowed, or where pushing back was met with severe punishment, seeing your teenager do those exact things can trigger a massive, disproportionate reaction in you.
Because you might think you are reacting to your 14-year-old's attitude, but you are actually reacting from the perspective of the 14-year-old version of yourself who never got to feel safe expressing those emotions.
Right. Surviving the teenage years isn't just about preserving your teenager's future. It is often about confronting your own past. The next time you find yourself entirely derailed by your teen's behavior, ask yourself, am I reacting to what is happening right now in this room? Or am I reacting to a ghost from my own adolescence?
That is a profound question to keep in mind. Awareness of your own triggers is really the ultimate grounding tool.
It takes immense practice and patience. But to everyone listening, you're doing a great job in an undeniably tough season of life. Keep exploring these concepts, keep giving yourself grace, and the next time a door gets slammed in your face, just take a breath and remember the manual hasn't disappeared. It's just being rewritten in real time. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Catch you next time.